Anybody have any thoughts you want to share or questions you want to ask as we get started? Okay. So I found kind of an updated version of, I guess we'll wait for some folks to join in here. I found kind of updated version of the sort of time thing. Well, I guess it's just got a few more things. So maybe we'll start with that. So Yaidet Achtuasagu Yichachwawusi Atataya Gao We Yatayach Wasatuasak Yadis
This plane,
Okay. Kunyaki Sawa Yawachi Yadis Koa.
Yaki, yeah.
Dech yaki aya ye awe dak yaki sawe ya yaki aka dech yaki awe ayacho yuchewatani ya kun yaki sawe yawachi ya disko kun yaki sawe yawachi Clay do shoot yaki yawachi ya dis. Yeah, away, Xíxchʼ, han. Ya dua, akach tuasaguyi satini, wasat duasak, ya dis. Disclaim, sak, disclaim, just disclaim. It was okay. Aka kun yaki sawe yawachi, ya dis. Clay dushu, yaki yawachi, ya dis. Dach yagi sawe ya yagi. No gwasdecha kapwasha. Dech yagi aya ya yagi. Yak Johan kun Xíxchʼ. Aka yata su chayku genki adat yuchagach tutlaat. Ya dua gwas yagi. Ya dua just atlain at. Gao. Yaki, yagi, yagi, yagi. Jadafa sa hetwa sa oti. Kleide hina yacho achwas yak. Adat aya teshchasakwa. We tlech yagi koa. Yatayach. Shukwa. Kenechich we kakan. Tkonde aya kenechich. Kea. Achua. Kia. Kecha. And Kecha. Akaoe utat. Yadua sitgausan. Kayatatsu. Utat atchayi. Sitgausan atchayi. Chana atchayi. Yewe achua uhan. Naskedihin awe atcha klein. Gachtucha. Kapyagi aya. Hi Yenechich wekakan. Kenechich, yenechich, kenechich, yenechich. Aka awe hi Chana tat. Tat sitgau san. Achua sitgam san. Tat sitgam san. Chayatatsu. Itcha yagi. Seqanen. Achua seqan. Khatqa achtua siku seqanen. Yeyach waqai. Itia seqanen klia akaden. Kletchach day after, tomorrow. Klia kletchach other side. Tliya'akatin. So Tliya'akatin. So there's this IN on here, in. You're going to see this pop up in other things, and it's just kind of an interesting thing. Usually when we see it on a verb, it means the verb isn't happening anymore. So du sagen is the place you may have seen that before. But it's not so simple as doesn't happen anymore, because it pops up on a lot of future things, which makes us just kind of think. And maybe it's a different thing, but I talked to Xíxchʼ, Jeff Lear, and he said he thinks it's the same thing. So it's in Xíxchʼ for tomorrow. It's in, so you see this one, Tliya'akatin. Well, that's just like Tliya'akat, but then you put that suffix on there. So Tliya'akat literally means on one of the ones on the other side. That's what it means. And that's how you get to day before yesterday. It's fun. My kid, he's 5. One of them, he's learning how to.
I think it might be that. Yeah, but I don't. That's what he was asking for. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to. Hold on.
And he's learning how to talk about stuff in English, and he talks about the day before yesterday as the day after yesterday, but that's actually today. So, then you get to Sháatkʼ, which is just the other day, and it's sort of like saying Tliya is again over on that other side. So it's like that, the yesterday on the other side. It kind of works like that. But Tliya could also work for, you can have Tliya dis, you can have Tliya talk, you can have the other month, you can have the other year, and this is just sort of moving things back into a set of time, right? Okay.
Just a question.
Gook.
It says yaki, yaki, yagi, yagi, yagi. It has nothing to do with the time of day, just different ways to say it?
Yes, so they're just, these are just dialect things. I'm not sure who does what where.
No, it's not good.
And I guess Tliya is not really the other side. It's more like farther over. Sorry. So, but there, I think you could go Nia and then Tliya. So Tliya would be far down. So Nia would be like the next one over. Okay. So thinking about like time on a bigger scale than sort of just, this top one is sort of like cutting a day into pieces, and then also looking at it a couple of days. Nisdat would be last night. Tatkeh is yesterday. So tatkeh siqanin. Those are good ones to sort of move back and forth. Similarly, so you have yidat, which means now, right? And you can also say yidadi. So yidati Tlingit, the Tlingits of today, right? Yidati ku'u, the current generation. So if you look at Ziyak and then Ziyagan, again, we're seeing that IN thing pop up, which puts it into the future. So Ziyak would be a little while ago. So I might say, Ziyak oe yi'in kachwanik, we yagi edat. A little while ago, I was telling you about today, right? So then we'll start on this bottom one. These are big concepts of time. So this top illustration is tiny kind and big kind, right? So we got yidet, which is kind of right now. And then this sometimes a little bit separated from verbs. So you might say yidet dewa, and then sort of start talking. So you're just sort of placing us right into the right now time. Ziyagan is a little while from now. Siqanan is tomorrow. And then there are other ways to start doing this other thing, like you got to push the language to do this stuff a little bit, but that yawachi can become yakwachi. So you could say ke jin yaki yakwachi. And 5 days will pass and then we'll see each other. So this is how you can start situating things in specific aspects of time. And then you can use seasons, you can use other things like, but if you're gonna start making plans in Tlingit, 3 days from now, we're gonna go to do this, we're gonna go to do that. That's how you would sort of do that. Yakwachi. So Yawachi is they have passed, Yakwachi, the days are going to pass. And then there's this concept, Ch'atleich. And Ch'atleich is forever. So this was like when Cyril George says, my prayer will be this, let Tlingit exist forever. So this one is a forever concept, whereas Ch'atleich is an always concept. And they're similar, right? But forever is like sort of like it's gonna last forever. And then Ch'atleich is it's gonna happen all the time. Okay. So then we start moving back. Ziyak is a while ago. Tatke. You can also do some things like you could say Yatsutat this morning. And I'm telling you some story about, and if I said this morning, then you're gonna think of it's today, but it was in the morning today. Otherwise, you'd have to sort of situate it in a specific day. So you could say, 2 days passed, and then in the morning. So if I wanted to, but I could just also say, because it might matter if I were saying like, when did you start cooking the hooligan grease or whatever, then you got to sort of know the number of days. But if it's just like the other day this happened, it doesn't, you just sort of learn how to just know when you need to be specific or not. Kliatke, the other day, kliadis, the other month, kliatak. You could also say kliakutan, the other summer, right? Kliatak iti, the other spring. And kliatak does mean the other winter, but tak, when people hear that, they're going to think the other year. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Can you say the other, like the other Saturday or the other last Saturday, last Sunday? When I was writing my sentences, I was having a hard time with last, you know?
Yeah, so you could say something like kliatke, the other day. Then you could say Sandikatsku. So then you could name it and then we know. So that's probably how I would do it. Just think it has a bit of a looser sense of time. Like in English, you would probably say, well, on Saturday, you know, and something like that. Or you might say 5 days ago. But I think in English too, sometimes you're just like, hey, you know what, the other day, I think it was like Saturday or something. So you're doing a similar thing. So I would start with, you know, kliatke. And then we just know it was a few days ago. And for a lot of things, it might not matter. But it does if like, it's time to go check that crab pot or it's time. So it's then you need to start specifying days. But yeah, so you go back to this one and you can just sort of name it, right? So you say, kliatke. So the other day on Thursday, right? If you need to start moving it back into numbers of weeks and stuff, you could do that too. Good question. So then we have ch'ak, which we talked about is like a long time ago. The more A's you put in there, the more you stretch that out, the longer it is. Ch'ak. And sometimes people, they tease if it's in good, you know, if everybody's in agreement that it's funny, then it's usually okay, right? So you could say, if we're just sitting around, we're all friends. They might say, you know, when I was a young man. And so I might say, Ch'ak. But you gotta all know each other. Everybody's gotta be comfortable with it. And then kaku is ancient times before we can really remember. Okay. Okay. Any other time questions? We got a couple more things to look at. Okay.
Hey,
Oh yeah, okay, I forgot this one. Sorry. So yeah. So then this one is getting into a specific sort of event. So Ashukhat is before it, and then Adach, Itnach, or Aqa is after it. And so it kind of depends how you're going to use this stuff, because Shukah on its own means in front of. So like, for example, I could say, Yak Shukach, Yanagwain Way Keet. These killer whales swimming in front of the boat. So that Shukah could just mean like a place. But it can also mean a time reference as well. So I could say, Ach Shukat Yachyisacha. You finished eating before I did. And so it could be referencing time like that. And then if you start using ha and you say Shukah, now you're talking about our ancestors.
What about ya shukut du kudak?
Ya Shukat?
Yeah, or maybe just shukut.
To say like
Du kudak.
Kudach.
Kunak. Sorry, not kudak. Kunak. Not too much, just a lot.
So like it was a lot. A lot was worn or used, maybe? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, it's just we were just talking about in our study group on something that Nora said that we were confused on. It sounded like ush.
Yeah, I think that one is Shukat, how he said before me, like before my time, when Nora's talking about the people, maybe the people who told the story before.
Oh yeah, because there's when you say hashuka has or anything like that, you could be talking about ancestors or the one who did this thing before you. In that case, that's probably what she was talking about. So you might say, like if I'm telling you a story, the one who told this before me, then maybe I'll name them and sort of say, this is how they told it, or something about that. Then Yesu is used for a time reference for right now when we're really tying it to a verb. And there seems to be two ways I see this used. So if you said Yesu and then something, you're saying right now. So I might say, my coffee it was ready right now. It just got ready, right? But if I move Yesu to after the verb, then in some contexts it will mean we're still doing this. So if someone might say, hey, you ready to go? It's a Klaik. No, we're still eating. All right, and so it seems to be a little bit flexible. I don't fully understand, but it seems to be that's how I'm seeing it used. Katye, David Kadishan said, we're still holding each other's hands on the world, is how that was translated. Then you can have adach, itnach, or aqa. Aqa away is sort of like just saying, and then after that thing, like if you're telling a story, like I went here and then I went to that place and then I saw this person. Adach, and adach seems to tie it a little bit more like I went to the bank, then I went to the store. So there seems to be a little bit more of a direct sequence between those things. And then itnach is sort of also that way. But in my mind, when I would say adach is like, well, I had to do that thing first and then I did that thing. Sort of going along those lines. Where itnach was like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And so literally they mean from it, following it, and going after it. Okay.
I have a question, and And I know this, we talked about this a little bit before, but it's a little bit with time, but it's also past tense. So it seems like everything's in the present tense, but not, it was harder for me to like talk about, like I said, last Saturday, last Sunday, I went, a lot of the I past tense.
Yeah, so most of the times when we're telling stories, we're using what in Tlingit we call them perfective verbs. So that means they've already happened. And so that's when you're going to hear that W sound in there, like woogoot, chwagoot, yigoot. And so that's one thing that's going to happen. And then when we move this to something that's happening right now, then it kind of depends which type of verb. But you might have yanagut and then yanchagut. And so that's when it's going to shift a little bit. And this is something that we're going to start practicing, is how do I do that? And so a perfective is a really good way to start, because a lot of what we communicate is often like, hey, let me tell you about what it was like growing up here, or knowing this person, or let me tell you what happened during this thing. And so we use those perfectives a lot. And they're, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to like use your reference book, you know, your Tlingit reference book, because I know that's kind of what we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe at some point it'd be helpful to understand this book, how to use this book better.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe after our break, I'll pull it up and we can just sort of look at it. And because there's still a few like symbols and what do those things mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start looking at that so that, yeah, you can look it up and then you'll see that verb, and then you'll know you can put day in front of that chwagut, and now you've gone it, now you go anywhere, but then it's got to attach to something. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, we'll take a look at that tonight. There's Xíxchʼ. So Xíxchʼ means it always happens. So if you're going to use this, and this will probably come a little later, but you'll learn to use this, and then your verb should be in a repetitive mode. So that's like, I always go there. I always eat Cheerios. I always talk to that person. And so Tlingit really likes to mark those verbs in a specific way. So then you could be, so gao is drum, time, clock, bell. And so gao shukut is in front of the clock. So that's early. Gao yach is like the clock, and that's being on time. And gao itch is following the clock, and that's being late. So that's also how you could talk about those things in time. So then we were kind of messing around with some ideas. So when you talk about time, and you chop it up in little pieces, you have gao is now also hours. Although those are usually like it's almost 6 o'clock now, so it would be kei du shu gao. So that would be 6 o'clock. So 6 drums, I guess, is how you're sort of looking at it. And then winnits or willits, which totally just comes from English, and you just make it Tlingish. And so these are some things to sort of think about a day. So here on a clock, I think you have K'ah, and then you get Tzutatet, whenever you eat, whatever. So you have Tzutat, and Tzutatet is breakfast. Yagi, you're in the whole day by that point. Atcha Kisani, maybe you have a snack. And then Tat Sit Gausan. Oh, that's getting around to nighttime. Oops. I'm trying to figure out how I did this. And then Tat. And then down here, you might have Sit Gausan, and Sit Gausan Atchayi would be lunch. Yaki is also the day. Chana Atchayi is dinner. Hi'ah is the dusk. And then Chana is sometime between the dusk and when it's really dark out. And then Tat is just generally when most people are asleep. And so we were trying to mess around with trying to come up with ways to say like quarter after, quarter till, but I don't think we've really figured that one out yet in terms of getting some consensus. But just sort of saying gao dach and then shu day and shu dach and gao day. So it's saying like going towards the hour, away from the hour, towards the half hour, away from the half hour. Just so that we don't have to say kun gao saya ke jin gao ka ke jin jin ka ka tle du shu minutes, which is it's just long, right? And so a similar thing in English. Like if someone says, what time is it? You don't always say 5:56. Sometimes you'll say it's almost 6 o'clock, right? And so, but there are some ways to do that, which I guess I don't have it on here. So I have to add this one. But you could say, Kleidushu Gao Day Yakandahit. It's gonna strike 6 o'clock. It's gonna strike it. And so, okay. So another concept of time, and I'll make sure I'll put the slideshow up on our class webpage tonight. So I was trying to work with some elders to figure out a few different concepts, just in terms of all day, every day type of stuff. So then I gave them these sample sentences, and this was Kakwanish and Xíxchʼ. And I said, I worked all day. So they said, so here's the I worked part, the katyagi would be all day long. So this is how you, if you want to sort of just express something, the katyagi is all day. Is usually just sticks with time references, and it has to do with going over a period of time. It's very similar to kanach, but kanach usually means like going over something physically. So if the katyagi is all day, kakyagi is every day. So now you're going to be doing it a little bit different. So kakyagi yechachane, I work every day, right? And so it's up to you. This isn't a repetitive form. This is just sort of, I'm working right now, or I work. And there's a number of Tlingit verbs that do that. And so, so this one, like yechachane, is I work, and I could say tuk yeki yechachane, I work every day. So then I asked them, how do you say like I worked 5 days ago? And they said, Kejin yaki shuwahich yechachane. So this shuwahich means it came to an end. This could work for days. This could work for months. This could also work for years, right? So this could be Kejin tak shuwahich yechachane. I worked 5 years ago. So I don't know what I've been doing for the last 5 years, but that's how you could also use that one as well. I worked 4 or 5 days. Oh, go ahead. Your question? Mute.
Could shuwak also be come to the end of the season? Like fall came to the end, you know, kind of like an end of a season, not just the end of a day?
Yeah. It could work. And then there is a shujachin is usually for a season to come. Like, so you could say, so there's 2 different ways to talk about that. One is you could say like, so like here's fall and here's winter. So you could say, Yées, yan shujachin. Fall is done. But you can also say, or winter's coming, right? Just like in Game of Thrones, all the time, right? So there's 2 ways to talk about. One is like one season's ending, the next one is coming. And so you do have 2 different, and that shujachin also works for, like if it's getting to be December 30th or whatever, it's like, kakde kukan achun. Yande shukwashkin. Hurry up, deer season's gonna end. right? So it could be a season for gathering, for hunting. But yeah, so, and I'll show you, like, so one way that you can also look this stuff up if you're thinking about it is if you go into the verb dictionary, and we might just sort of go under English section, go under E, scroll down and look for end. And so we see it right here. So Tauk Yende Ya Shun. Winter is coming to an end. Qukan Shun Yan Shu Chachin. The deer hunting season is closed. And so then right underneath that we see Shuwahi. And so this is usually days, or it could be, you know, look at that sentence. We don't want that. But this is also for things to die. So you could say, they all died off. So that's another way that you just say they came to their end, right? And so it's English does some things like that too. Yeah, Nick. Kayakis, you also have that one. Probably not, I don't hear it as often. This verb means like to put out a light oftentimes, or to put out a fire. But you'll see it here. Okay, good question. Okay, so then we have, I worked for 5 days. So now we see Keichin Yagi Shuwahich switches to Keichin Yagi Nach. So again, this Nach is over a period of time. And so that could be, you know, maybe work out at the mine or whatever, and you got called out to work. So that could be Naskdis. I worked for 3 months, right? And so, and then I was kind of messing around a little bit more. So I was like, well, what about like, I will work 5 days from now. And they said, so it was interesting to me, because I kind of would have expected this one to be in a future form. But what this I is doing at the end is it's sort of saying when 5 days pass, I will work, right? So this, because this is in the future, that helps to sort of put the logic together in the Tlingit brain. Then I will work for 5 days. So this shows you here, here's Yejechwane, I worked. Yejechane, I'm working right now. And Yejechwane, I will work. So this starts to get us ready to look for those things. You get this hua sound in there. Then you got nothing. And then you got this kakwa. And that's a pretty good, that's gonna really help you predict some of these other patterns. Because at beginning Tlingit, it's a lot of just memorization, fill in the blank stuff. Intermediate Tlingit, it's all about like sort of saying, okay, let's start learning how to maneuver this stuff, because you cannot memorize an entire language. You're gonna have to start getting the mechanics of it together. And then advanced Tlingit is just gobbling up a whole bunch of more stuff. Okay, thoughts or questions? Everyone okay?
Just one question about Yejechwane. So that's just if you're talking about yourself, but if I was going to say do Yejene, that's like referring to the other person working.
Well, so if you said, once you say do, now that's his or her work.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's their job. But if you want to say they are working or they are going to work, then let's say they worked, this would be Yejiwane.
Yejiwane.
As opposed to Jechwane.
And
And then if you want to say they are working, Yejene. So this cha disappears. So that cha is the me part. And then here, instead of Yejikwane with this underlined K, you have Yejikwane with the underlined G. And then I saw in the chat, there's another question. Yeah, because associated to this is moon phases and the tide. So for the tide, you've got ye nashain, which is the tide is going down. The verb root for that is shla, which is melting. So the tide kind of melts out. And then yan uwashla is the tide is all the way out. These ones are in the chat. Dakte yawada. So a couple things is yun means the verb is usually completed. So I could put that there too. Like I could say yejechwane, I worked. But if I said, if I was working on some project and someone was asking me about it, I could say adat yun yejechwane. And that means I finished it. It's done. So that's why you hear people say yun ge. Are you ready? And that's what the yun part is doing in there. And then we have dakte. So dakte is up towards the land, right? So and then yawada. So da, that root is to flow, for water to flow. So the tide melts out, flows back, melts out, flows back. And then yan kat uwada, it's ready. And then it's like it's gone up half a person. That's pretty cool. Okay. Good questions, folks. Let's see. We got a few more, and then we're going to just move into a couple other time concepts. So I asked him again, like he went to work and will be home in 2 days, just to keep trying to figure out these little differences. Yechene day wugut, went to work. You could also just say yechene wugut. And that could also be something different, right? Ashqa wugut, he went gambling, right? Qadech yaki shuahihi kuch. So the kuch part is the coming back. I would probably expect this actually to be, because it's in the future, kuchte. Okay. So again, ch'ak is often a long time ago, but you'll also hear, depending on how it's being used, right? So for example, if I'm telling some story, I say, adate weye jene, konache jene, ch'ak, owe, satqayeka, yanye jiwane. So like, then they worked on it. They really worked on it. And so the ch'ak right there is saying they worked on it for a long time. And then finally they finished working on it. Right? So it depends on how this one's being used. It could be long time ago, or it could be for a long time. And then you have ch'agude. But what the day usually says is like, it's getting to be a long time. It's going towards being a long time. And then ch'agudach would be from a long time ago. So it's a pretty flexible word in terms of its meaning. And then there's this form is pretty complicated, but you'll learn how to put it together. So this one, so kudzati is to exist. Kudzati is to be born. So you hear that little W pop up in there. Is before I was born. So if you wanted to sort of, those are really advanced time references in Tlingit. So like before this thing happened there, and so you're gonna work your way up to that. For now, just use the sort of more general time references. That's kind of where a lot of us are probably at. 5 days ago, the other day, on Saturday, those types of things are just great. So here's just some stuff as I was sort of putting this together, because we were doing this, I was doing this for students because I wanted students to be able to use the language to tell stories. It's such a big part of what what we do, I think. And so this is from Elizabeth Nyman, just going through looking for some time references in her stories. She uses a tu sometimes as like, you know, furthermore, and you don't hear a whole lot of speakers use that. It literally means like inside of it, but just it has this sort of narrative function. Take 100, 1 yag. So this 1 yag is to say like more than that. So for example, like I was teaching kids to learn how to count and stuff. And so you might say a 1 yag to say like more than it. Here was another fun one. Kledeyu de ki ayakatut ki nach a keu tuwaat. We had gotten high more than halfway up. So kledeyu de ki. So by that time we were already up high. That's what that part is doing. Ayakatut. So this one, katut on its own, is halfway up, usually a container. So in English, they might say, is it half full or half empty? It's a katut. And that's what it is. It's just halfway. But the yakatut would be like going halfway up a mountain or something like that. Kinach, again, like up high, keutuwat. We went up even high. We went up higher than that is what she's talking about. After she said it the 4th time. I thought these are really cool sort of things, the way they're put together. Dachun is really just the 4th one. So you can say Tlecha, Decha, Naska, Dachun, Kejin. Those are ways you can sometimes assign numbers to things like chapters. You can also say, there's ways to say like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Okay, maybe I'll do one more and then we'll see. So that's how she said the whole time. So chutle on its own is like just then, and then chaklak is always. But when she combined them, that's how she was saying the whole time or all the time, right? Aawasháayi for quite some time. So this is another thing that Tlingit tends to do. Like sometimes it looks like it should be a question maybe, but it's not functioning like a question. Like if I said, Aqawe dakte haswakuch dakte deki kunyaki sawe haswakuch aqawe yan haswakuch angun, right? So they went out there, they went out to sea, they went way out to sea. Kunyaki sawe awachi. Which would be asking like how many days? How many days passed? But the way you would interpret that in the context of a story would be for many days. It's just saying, who knows how many, right? For many days, they're out there boating around. Okay, there's a few more pages on here, but we're probably done enough. Thoughts, questions? I think we'll get back into the frog story in a minute here.
Do you have you worked out anything about numbering years? Like if historical facts might have Western calendar years attached to them.
Oh, like 1904 or something like that?
Yeah, that might be a good year.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like usually I'll hear people say, if they were going to use calendar years, and they would say like 1,000 is 1,000. So they'd say 1,000 kushakhandid kadakun. Oh, you do a sock with talk. So they'll say that's what that year is called. But then a lot of times if you hear the old people, they'll just say 1904, awa, and then they'll just sort of move into something else. So just drop the English in there. So yeah, that's a good question, because it's not that common, you know, especially, but it's something we should, if we wanted to sort of run a whole Tlingit school, we would have to have those dates and then other things in there. Good question. Okay. Xíxchʼ, Johan. Anything else?
There's one phrase we were working on in study group, and is it okay if I ask for your help on it? I'm just sharing my screen. So again, this is the video of Keochne telling Yées and she's talking about this part. Aawasháayi ya Xíxchʼ ya and then we think she's saying something like dagak e kunach, this highlighted part.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't find it anywhere, and we're not really sure what that means, or if we're even writing the right what she said.
Uh-huh. Okay. Let me find that story.
I do have it up. I can put this link in the chat or play it.
Oh.
That's the phrase I was butchering earlier. I was trying to remember on the top.
Oh. Okay.
Do you want me to play this part of the video, or would that take too much time?
No, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So it starts at 2 minutes and it goes till 2:30.
Aawasháayi. Aawasháayi.
Sorry, I had it on slow. I'll play normal speed.
Aawasháayi. Aawasháayi. Xíxchʼ. Xíxchʼ ya Goakan Yées. Dagak e kunach. Chakodi de Kotsaklanik. Aawasháayi Yachdoach. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this thing that could pop up in front of a verb, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard before. So if I say, what does this mean if I say, yake?
Good, or it's good.
Yeah, it's good. They, singular, they are good. What about hasyake?
They are good.
They are good. They are good. So there's another one that can pop up, and sometimes it's going to sound like dach, and sometimes it's going to sound like daqa. And that means each of them. And so the way that it's used as opposed to has, oftentimes it's sort of one of two things. It's going to be, it's non-human things. So when we say dachte at, that means all the things that breathe. And that's the dach is the same thing as this daqa that you're hearing in here. The other case is when you're saying not just them, but like they all did something at sort of the same time, but maybe in like they all jumped off a boat, but in different directions. That's how I like to think of that one as opposed to has. So it does have a few different uses, and this is something you'll hear the older speakers use, and then you'll hear it more if you go to, I think you hear it more if you go to Teslin than in other places. So they'll say, so you might hear them say taqayati, which means they are like that, right? And then the a part is a. So daqaqequnach. So she's saying each of them are really good. Yeah, and I'd probably have daqaqe as one word, all low tone in the prefix. Okay.
Gulchi.
I had the good fortune of sitting down with Nora and just translating that with her, which was very, very fun. Okay, good questions. Okay, let's go back into our story. We're continuing to learn from this story. So quick recap. Pretty girl, everyone wants to marry her. She thinks she's better than everybody. One day she's walking, she sees these frogs, laughs at them, picks one up, says a whole bunch of really nasty insults, which are, maybe you need to have those insults in your handbag sometimes, you know, just every now and then, sometimes for teasing, sometimes it gets real, I don't know. But she said a bunch of things about how ugly those frogs were, threw it back in the ocean, and for a walk at night. So you're not supposed to laugh at animals. You're not supposed to tell animals they're ugly. You're not supposed to throw them. You're also not supposed to walk around by yourself at night. So she's just setting us all up for the ultimate plot twist here. So then a guy shows up and it says, like, let's get married. And so she says, sure, because she's being charmed by this thing, which we'll figure it all out. And then she's disappeared. Her family's looking for her. Cry song. She's gone. Much later, this guy walks by and sees her sitting at the lake. These frogs are all around her. And this was where we left off. So let's jump ahead one slide. Oops. Okay. Can I get someone to read this? So we're going to take turns reading. And we're going to all go. So please don't sit and wait. Everybody needs to read. And then once you read, I'm just going to ask you what kinds of things you recognize. No pressure. The translation's right there. We're just doing some word recognition and seeing how the sentence kind of gets put together, and also just practicing some larger sentence level reading exercises. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Xíxchʼ.
Okay. You can't do good.
Okay. Good. And what do you recognize in that?
Do he, and then the good and good or like went.
Yeah, exactly. So how anyone can answer this. How do you think you would say she came up to me?
Achant uagut.
Achant uagut. I came up to her.
Duchant chuagut.
Yep. So again, like just some pattern stuff. So there's this chan is next to, right? And this is how you go to visit people, see people, go up beside them. And so, and then the T part means to arrive. So you can also use chande, chandach, those types of things. But if you wanted to say, in our Tlingit speaking village that we're constructing, go to your mother. Ika chande naku. So these are the useful things that we can pull out of this one short phrase. There is a difference between wugut and uagut. And really, like if it's a T or where there's day or dach, the T is usually going to get this uagut, whereas the day would get good, wugut. Okay. Who wants to do this one?
I can go.
Ah,
Akawaak jidach awus nechi kuahinde has awachut we Xíxchʼ kwani.
sheesh. Kawa'aq ajidacha was nechi. Ku'ahin de has awachut Xíxchʼ. And what kinds of things do you recognize in there?
The hinde is by the water again. The Xíxchʼ kwani is the frog people. Awachut is familiar.
Okay.
And jidach, I feel like that's to grab, to pull towards, like G, like jin, like and dach, bring to you.
Sheesh. Okay. Yeah, so a kawa'aq is to try or to try it out. So then this is how you can, and once you learn how to do this, you'll learn how to say like kachwa'aq, keosanuk. I tried to pick it up like some kind of creature. That's a living creature. I don't know, but there you can try all kinds of stuff, right? But this verb means to try it out. Achidach would be, so this G is possession. So it's related to the hand. But so now you can go G-day, G-dach, G-nach, and you're going to see it used quite a bit. Yées. So Yées would be for someone's possession. G-day would be to their possession. G-dach would be from their possession, right? And so this is one of the things, like this is how you would say taking something out of someone's hands or anything like that. It could be, you also see this as jeet sometimes, but ajidach, so from the frog's possession is the way it's gonna work. And then this one, awasháayi, is to rescue or to save or to heal. It kind of depends how it's being used, but in this case, he tried to like rescue her from the frogs. He tried to get her from there. Ku'a is usually going to give us a bit of a turn, right? So like although or something like that. Hinde, to the water. And then chut is to drag something. So in this case, has awachut, they drug her into the water. So this guy, he tried, so, you know, just going back a little bit, some guy was walking and saw her. And so now we're going to be getting his perspective. So he tried to rescue her, but they drug her back into the water, the frog people. And that kwani is usually going to be used in stories when, if we were in her mind, she's probably just sitting around with these people. She sees them as people. But if someone else sees her, it's like, what are you doing with those frogs? But she probably can't even talk to them right now.
So would awasháayi would that be like the same when you said to rescue but to heal? Would that be like when you're talking about healing sickness or something?
Yeah. So like there's a couple things, like if this classifier is an S, which usually means, so you could say chatwu neich, I got better. But then if you said chatwu senech, that person healed me. So that's what sometimes that classifier is going to make that switch for that reason. And this comes back to, I was sitting there and I was listening to Selena Everson testify about languages, and she said, our language saved us, right? So it could, and that senech is powerful because it could be healing, saving, and it could be saving like in terms of like, I saved you from going down the rapids, and it could be like, it's used when people say like, you know, the Lord saved me, like that would be also that same verb. And what's really interesting is you could say, let's say I'm eating some cookies, and I say, I'm going to save this cookie, but I'm just going to set it aside so I can eat it later. So it could also mean to reserve something. So it's really cool to see how these things work. So in this instance, he's trying to rescue her, because it could also be used like that. So yeah, it's a really powerful verb.
Could you put the root in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Yes.
Xíxchʼ.
You're going to look up neich. And then since we're talking about roots, we're going to go back into the verb dictionary, because the same thing as we're reading these stories, to be able to take these kind of deeper dives into them, sometimes we're like, oh, well, I want to know more about that verb. So you'll just learn to recognize when you hear awasnech or ausenech, you're just like, oh, that must be the nech, that must be the verb root. So then you'll go here under the N for the Tlingit section, and we'll go down. And then it's here to be saved, healed, cured, recover, to be satisfied, to save, heal, cure, to save for future use. So then we can go in here and we'll go look up saved and see what we got, and look up healed. So we go to the S section. Here's save, to be saved from danger or harm, either physical or spiritual. To save, like save me. So here's that's what you could say if the frog people started to take you and your friend was there. And then to save for future use, we see it switching to an L classifier. So in this case, he saved the water so he could use it later. So this gives us some examples, right? But then to be able to use this verb, we'll probably have to look at a different source. So what we'll go to is the verb database by Carrie Eggleston. And so here we have it listed by roots. We'll go down to the ends and we'll see nech. And then we see the zero group classifier. So this one is basically to get better. And then the S classifier is to heal somebody, right? So a lot of times when this classifier is switching, it's because it's not just for something to happen, it's for somebody to do that thing, right? For example, yak, it's good. Xíxchʼ, you made it better, right? So in this case, we could go through and then we see a command form, save it. Y'all save it. Then we're gonna see what we call a prohibitive. So the do it, the don't do it, right? Which I don't know, like, I guess just let them go, right? I don't know what you're gonna use this one for, but, and then we see ausenech, chwasenech, right? So this is also gonna start giving us some examples. I did it, they did it, a singular person did it. Didn't do it, will do it, won't do it, let him or her do it, does it all the time, hasn't done it yet, can't do it, when they do it, does it regularly, and then here's a sample sentence. So here's the example of like, don't save it. Don't save it. Let's eat it right now. So this is how you start using these resources, sometimes just to build your own understanding of how this verb works, and sometimes to look it up, to say, oh, I want to say like, we're going to save our language or something like that. So you could say, and you'll learn how to do this once you see the future. You'll say, Ye gach tu sanech hayukatangi. We're gonna do it. Okay. Yakayo, huh? Well, let's take 5. We'll come back and we'll keep going through our story because we gotta get to the end of it. Okay. See you in a few. Okay. So she got dragged back in the water. Who wants to read this one?
Kuch awud taw jichich ya ande ya yi Sháatkʼ in Aawasháayi ya yi si.
Sheesh. Aawasháayi on day. Ya ye Sháatkʼ in Aawasháayi ya ye see. What do you recognize in that one?
Ya ande ya yi Sháatkʼ in I believe that's the part that I don't know. Tauji Heek. I know we just talked about this one earlier, and it sure isn't. It isn't running. So
Well, it is.
It is okay.
But there's and so kuch is to go back. So you can kuch whatever. It's just to return. So like wherever you left, you can kuch back to where you went, right?
Oh, okay.
Kuch is also sort of going backwards sometimes, but it could be return. It's most often returning. Would you? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So kuch would be he ran back or she ran back. What the ta is doing is like, it's not used very often, but it could be used to say they ran to tell somebody some information. So like, if someone's like, they're on watch, then they got to run back and say, here they come, they're going to attack. That's going to be this particular verb right here. So that's what is doing. It's not used very often, but this would be like to run to go tell someone something. On day, so to the village. The young girl, in Aawasháayi is her a family. Yep, so her family. And then
is that like
is like just you're putting emphasis on something, right?
So it's like we've seen you.
Yeah. So in this case, like, whoa, I saw your daughter. And so he starts with because it's like it's a big deal because everybody thought she was dead. And so now he's saying, I saw y'all's daughter. So there's the chwasatin part. I saw it, or him, or her. And then ye see. Okay. You okay? Can I get a reader for this one?
Aawasháayi ku'a we kchi kwani kuk awe hu.
Keshwasa'ote ku'a we hichkwani kuk awe hu. And what do you recognize there?
Well, the first part can be part of a greeting. Not so bad. I'm okay. And we have the frog people again. Oh, those frog people. That's it.
Okay. So yeah, keshwasa'ote. That could be a response to like fine, but in this case, in the context, he's still, now we know he's talking about this girl, right?
Right.
So he says, she's okay. Keshwasa'ote. She's okay. Right? And so there's some different things, like you could put chat right there. Keshwasa'ote. Like let's say I was walking on a log or something. I fell off and everybody got worried. I might jump up and say, "Kashwasakhat ute." And then same thing, if we were learning to use this one at the daycare, at the language nest. So if people were saying "Iekega, iekega," and I said, well, that's kind of like asking, are you being good? Kashwasake ite, are you okay? Right? So she's okay. Although the frog people, who is among. So she is among the frog people. And just so we know, this who, sometimes it just means to go be among, like ka hu. One of the kids at a language nest was really pouting, so we let that person pout. After a while, they went back and started playing, and our elder asked, did that kid go among the people, go back among the people? I was like, yeah. Sometimes this could mean hunting or trapping. So you might say, they went among the beavers, because sometimes in old style Tlingit, you wouldn't talk about hunting or trapping things while you were doing it, because it was considered bad luck and kind of bragging sometimes. But it could also mean, if you say he's among the landdaughter people, that means he got taken. And so that's also what's being said here. Once you have kwani, she's among them, and she doesn't really realize it. That could be communicated all in that sort of short thing. And then aweh, hu is her or him.
Is that the same as who, as in yanach nahu?
Nahu, that's like swimming. So the yanach nahu sounds to me like swim along it or something, or wade along that thing.
That wouldn't be the same as who na then, that who then, huh?
No, like there's a place, if you've ever been to Skagway and you drive from Skagway to Whitehorse, you go over a mountain pass, then you're at a place called Aawasháayi, among the little lakes. So you might hear this in some place names or in names of people, but it's going to be the who sound right at the end.
Okay. Oh, geez.
Okay, how about this one? Can I get a reader?
I'll do it.
Jeez.
Xíxchʼ Juani Kuwak Aawasháayi Yées Yawakudukik.
Xíxchʼ kwak Aawasháayi Yawakudukik. And what do you recognize in there?
Well, obviously frog people.
There again.
And Dukik, sister, her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Xíxchʼ. So Aawasháayi and Yawaka are very similar in terms of what they're doing. The verb itself means to say a certain thing. So if you wanted to say, there's a difference between they told me what happened and they told me this exact. So once you start getting into the exact words, you're going to move into yeyawaka. So yeyawaka is just like she or he said. So if you want to talk about some specific quote from like Austin Hammond or something, Danawaka, and then you have some, you're going to say their exact words, right? Then the Aawasháayi would be they said this exact thing to somebody. So that's in this case, that's why the classifier is switching. Because like not just said it, but they said it to somebody. The kwak in front of it is a mistake. And depending on the it could mean like I made an error, but it could mean you really messed up. And that's what is being said here. So when you say kwak Aawasháayi, she said something that was a mistake. And then that's the younger sister, because if we go back in the story, the younger sister was there and she saw it. So this is what she's saying. She's like, oh, yeah, they took her. She said she messed up and she said this stuff to them. So that's what the kwak is doing here. Sometimes there'll be another word, dak, in front of it. And it could be just like, oops, made a boo-boo. But it could be like, oh, they offended that whole other clan, or they could be a really big deal too.
Oh,
That's
that part with the ka, that root, what kind of is that? That is the verb root of talking, huh? Like suyena ka.
it's to say a certain thing.
Oh.
So when you
He
say
went out and did.
suyena ka, you're saying say it again. Say that thing again.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
But that, okay, that's okay.
So there are related ones, like yuchatan is to speak, Xíxchʼ is to converse, and then yeyanaka, say it, say that exact thing.
Mhm.
So some of the differences there, I could, as a command form, I could say yuchatan, talk. But if I say yeyanaka, say it. So there's some exact thing that you're supposed to say. That's the difference. Okay, who wants to read this one? If you haven't read yet, now's a great time.
Read.
Can go.
Oh,
Someone take this one, someone take the next one.
I'll go next.
Okay.
all right. Aawasháayi Aawasháayi.
Okay. Aawasháayi. And what do you
Aawasháayi.
recognize? What do you recognize in there?
Away. Then I'm not sure what the means, but I heard the and away next to each other all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with that. So if you start a sentence with away, you're usually saying because of that. So then once we've sort of talked about something, so this is, here's the sister chiming in. Well, she said this, she messed up when she said this thing to the frogs. That's why they took her. So that whenever you have away, so this could be a whole, you're just tying whatever you said before to the next thing. So you could say, we're from Xíxchʼ. That's why we're called Xíxchʼ. So it could be, it's really like a really good cause and effect thing to learn how to do. So you could say, just the cut ye de ya anashitoe dudana achoe testana dugia. That they just throw their money around. That's why they don't have any money right now. So it's just sort of cause and effect type of thing. So the is usually saying because of. There are some cases where you're saying to do something with something else, and it just happens to sound the same, but it's a little bit different. This Aawasháayi, I think, is a different verb than the other Aawasháayi. It sounds very similar, but this is the verb for when animals come to take you away. Just so that we know that that verb exists. So this is when the kushta comes, the other thing, when they come to get, That's what this is. They're going to oust you.
Is Hachqua related to that Ach?
No, it's just different. So that hachqua is like, that's what you get. So that's a really short way. And I don't think that it's, you know, you could do a longer one. You say, what you did wasn't right. And that's why it happened that way. But then you could just say, hachqua. That's the short version. Good question. Okay. Who was next?
Xíxchʼ Quanakuu tu Akawut set.
Okay. And what do you recognize in there?
Ku'u was kind of like all of them. So basically all of the frog people, and then Tua is like their feelings, but I've heard Akawut sets, but I
Okay. Yeah, so we get Xíxchʼ again, the frog people. The Ku'u is sort of like all of the frog people or the ones who were there. It just means like the ones who sort of live there or who are there. Again, like the Ku'u is really good to, you could say like Seattle Ku'u, the people of Seattle, stuff like that. Tuwu, feelings, intentions, spirit. And then this Akawetsets is to hurt somebody's feelings, right? So this is, again, so the little sister breaking it down for us, you know, she hurt their feelings. And so this would be, you could say, tuwu Akawetsets. They really hurt my feelings, right? And so this is to cause some emotional pain. Okay, who wants to read this?
Yées Sháatkʼ in Aawasháayi Hasuat.
Sheesh. Sháatkʼ in Aawasháayi Hasuat. And what do you recognize in that sentence?
The young girl, that's all I that's all I can recognize right now.
So yeah, this young girl, in is a family. So the young girl's family, Aawasháayi, down to the lake, down to the shore of the lake, Hasuat, they went. Right, so this Hasuat, now they went somewhere. So here's the day. So you could put any noun there that you wanted to, and that's where they went. So you could say, Hundakahiti de Hasuat, they went to the store. Shkun de Hasuat, they went to school. Deshu de Hasuat, they walked to Haynes. Who wants to do this one? We're going at a good pace. Let's keep it going.
Hasu has ausitin ka has akawa kids our huti.
Sheesh. Has ausitin ka hasakawa case our huti. And what do you recognize there?
Has ausitin is they saw a singular person. Yeah, that's
okay. Good. Sheesh. Yeah. So hasu, them too. Has ausitin. This could be, yeah, they saw a single person saw them, they saw them. It could be any one of those three. But in this case, once we said hasu, we know we're talking about the family. And then we're of course talking about this girl. That's they saw her. Ka hasakawa ak. And they tried. Ach case awachuti. So here's that chut verb, to drag. Ach is a contraction of adach, so off of it, from it. Case awachuti. It's like they tried to pull her up off of it, is really what that means. So they tried to drag her out. So she's down in that mud with those frogs. Okay, another reader. Did we make it all the way through? I don't think we did yet.
Xíxchʼ kwani kua hin has ash jiwatan.
Sheesh. Xíxchʼ kwani kua hin has ash jiwatan. Jiwatan, sorry. What do you recognize in there?
Xíxchʼ kwani, the frog people.
Mm-hmm.
Hin is the water. And I think that's it.
Okay. Sheesh, yeah, so there's those frog people. Kua. What the kua does in this case is says, now we're talking about somebody else doing something. So the kua is really good for using. So sometimes it's like, it was this, but it was this. But in this, it could also work to say, oh, and then these ones. So it comes right after it when we're changing the subject of who's doing the things. Heen is the water. And we've seen heen day, heeny. Sometimes we'll say hint, and then heen is along the water. Hus is them. Ush. Ush is going to pop up in stories quite a bit. And it's another pronoun. Here's a new one. So we've done like me, us, you, y'all, singular they, plural they, people. Now we have a new one, which is the main character, the one we've been talking about. So now we know the ush is this girl. This is the story about her. Jiwatan. This one means like take somebody by the hand. So it has some different uses. But the way that Kahuanish explained it, he said, this is like when the animals take you and then they keep taking you. We got a verb for that. And so that's what this one is being used for. So they pulled her along under the water.
Is there a whole list of like, I guess, my brain just scattered off, prefixes that have to do with animals doing certain things to people?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. We could probably assemble a set of those verbs, because there are verbs for like animals to come take people, animals to show up and look like people. There's a specific verb for, it doesn't happen often. It's not something that, people probably talk about us in certain ways, but sometimes there's stories of like a woman and a bear or a man and a bear, and then they have a baby. Like that's not just your common, like there's a verb for people to do that thing that ends up with babies, right? That's the hush verb. But there's a different one for when it happens, like, because it's a really unusual thing. It's like some sort of crossing over into the animal realm. And sometimes we're careful with that stuff because people are going to misinterpret what we're talking about.
That's between an animal and a man. Hook.
No, that's between two people. Or
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got that. Okay. Thank you. Got confused there for a second.
I'll have to look up the other one. George told me that one at one point. So we'll cover that on Thursday. Okay, who is reading next?
Du Xíxchʼ Xíxchʼ Ka'u Adi we Xíxchʼ Kwani Hastu Ye Ausane.
Sheesh. Du Xíxchʼ Ka'u Adi we Xíxchʼ Kwani Hastu Ye Ausane. So, what do you recognize in there?
Du Xíxchʼ is her dad, and ch is like habitual. Xíxchʼ is that like cherish?
It could be, yeah. We'll come back to it. Keep going.
Okay. Ka'u Adi. I don't know what that means, but like it reminds me of ut'u, and ut is like things, and Xíxchʼ Kwani is the frog people. Hastujide Ausane. Hastujide is in their possession. Ye Ausane. I thought that meant like they did it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is the sort of the doing it verb. So we'll take a walk through. So yeah, du Xíxchʼ is their father. So in this case, we know we're talking about this girl. So her father. When the CH pops up on a noun, this means that's the person who's doing the thing that we're going to say. So we saw the ku'a used like this, and then the CH, if it's ever unclear who's doing the verb, you'll throw that. And that's why you see a kusachakwanch in that story. It's like the cannibal was doing this thing. Yés'chʼ, chach, wa'ch. And so if it becomes unclear who's doing it, or in the like a story is complicated, like, oh yeah, and then this person does it, and then this other person does this thing, and then this person shows up and does this thing. So we see Tlingit using ku'a and now this ch thing. So once we see that, we're like, oh, her dad's coming to do something. Kashitsini, there's two versions of this, one with the subject and one without. So without the subject, it means to be valuable. Kashitsin, that necklace is expensive. But with the subject, it means to cherish something. Ka'u adi. George was the only one I ever heard use this word. And he said, because we're trying to translate the word a present or a gift. And that's what he said. So, Ka'u adi. So he had these valuable presents, these gifts. Xíxchʼ, the frog people, Hastujide Yeausane. So when we have Dujide in front of Yeausane, that means he gave them things. So Yeausane is also a carrying verb for just a bunch of different, it could be a bunch of different things. Right? So he gave them all kinds of things, right?
Is there a specific word for that kind of reciprocity when you pay for a mistake and give them gifts for that?
Yeah. There are ways to talk about that. So there's a specific verb for like paying a medicine person in Xíxchʼ. Then I think there is a verb for like a repayment. I'll have to see if I can find it. Because in this case, he's just given them stuff, right? So this is the verb for just like to give something to someone. And in this case, the way the story is going, like he's just like, here, take this stuff. And if you take this stuff, maybe you'll give her back. And so if we go and we look up pay in the verb dictionary, here's some things, right? So here's to pay for damage. So this would be the one. This sige would be like, we broke their mask, we had to have a ku'ik and pay them back. Or we did something we weren't supposed to that clan, so we were fishing in their grounds, we told their story in public, there's a bunch of different stuff. So now we had to pay them back. And so same with this one. So to pay, so this one is like to pay for that debt type of thing. Here's to pay for work. Here's to pay, you know, with emphasis on like how much money was paid, right? To pay for work that's done, to pay an Xíxchʼ, and then to pay an Xíxchʼ, we're talking about like exactly what you paid with. So in this case, here's a classifier switch again to say it's not just a thing, but we're talking about what specifically was used for that payment. So that's where the difference would be like, oh yeah, I paid them for that. Oh no, I paid them $15 or whatever it is, right? So of course, Tlingit's got like different ways. And then this is to make it good. And then there's also like that's that peace ceremony, because sometimes you need to pull that in if things really got messed up.
Kune, when I'm trying to remember just that one that you had, Xíxchʼ, was that right?
Uh-huh.
Grandma Selena in my classroom, when I had asked her about how we talk about in our classroom, how we make things right with one another. Like, so if you do something just within the context of a classroom amongst classmates and friends, how you make things right. Mm-hmm. She had said something about that word, and now I can't remember it off the top of my head. But well, it had that base.
This verb means to improve something or to make it good. Right. So there could be some, you know, I'm not sure what she might have said about it, but you know, there's probably ways you would use this to say, because there's ways to say fix it too, like that Aawasháayi verb could be to fix something. Like and we need context, right? So like so much of language, once you disconnect it from context, it gets hard to figure out. Because I could say I want you to do it. So it depends what we're talking about, right? Because if we're like, who's going to fix the tire? I want you to fix that tire. But then it could be, I want you to make it better. So it could be that too. But if I was getting more specific, like let's say we're talking again as a clan or as a class, as a group of people, and we're trying to figure out, oh man, this thing got messed up somehow. And so I might, if I was in a leadership role, I might turn to someone who made that mistake. I want you to make it better. And so that could be the case. And so, and this is getting into these big concept verbs, right? So that you could say, we made it better. It was bad, but we made it better. And so it's just sort of getting into that kind of realm. Okay, now let's see what happens. So yeah, so he gave him all kinds of nice stuff. That's what's going on here. He's just like, here, take this. Okay, let's see where. Okay. Not too. Somebody read anybody not read yet? There's some voices out there just longing to hear.
Wush yinade seich kaye
aya uwu atcha. Hindeye ausine.
Okay. Wushinade Xíxchʼ ka ye aya uwu atcha hinde ye ausine. So what do you recognize in this one?
Atcha for food.
Mm-hmm.
Ausine again for to do. Aya uwu again, kind of like atu, like Anna said. Aya uwu. That's about it.
Okay, goodness, sheesh. So wushinade is like different kinds. And there's you could say the cut ye day is like all kinds, but wushinade would be different kinds. So it kind of depends what you're saying. Xíxchʼ is a dish or a bowl. And then ka, so like different kinds on a bowl. Ye aya uwu. So what this one is, so there's two different u verb roots. One is to buy things. That's going to be related to at'u and ka'u adi. And the other one's going to be to use things or to put them on. And sometimes you're going to get that one as well. So in this case, he put a bunch, and so he put different kinds of food on a plate. So here's the atcha. And just on its own, that means he did it towards the water. But once we sort of get the whole context, what you see in your mind when you put the language together is like he put all these different foods on plate, on these bowls, and was putting them out on the water. Okay. Let's keep it going.
Ye has ausene we atka ha kashatsini ka u adi ku a hesh has duji ajiwanak ya has du si.
Sheesh. Ye has ausene we atcha kashatsini ka u adi ku a hesh has duji ajiwanak ya has du si. So what do you recognize in here?
Ausene to do.
Mm-hmm.
Atka our food. And you said kashatsini was cherished or something?
Like valuable.
Valuable. Has to see. I feel like that's probably all.
Okay, okay. So when we have this ye ausene, it's like the generic, this is just the do it verb, right? So what we usually look for is like, what's right before it? Because that's gonna alter it, right? So when we saw, you put like dujit, that's like giving to someone, but is a contraction of adach, so it means from it. But when you put from it in front of any type of, there's a few different verbs that'll just push it right into this carrying verb type of thing. So ye has ausene would be, they picked it up off of it. So it's a bunch of different things. So you could have ye has awati, if they picked up like a rock, and then it could change for some different things there. So they picked it up, the food, and these expensive gifts, so they took it, right? But hesh hastu ji ajiwanak. So this one means to let go of something. And it could depend on, it could have some different uses. It could mean to drop something, or there was a time when, I don't know if I told you guys this story. I have a nephew, and he was really little at the time, and I had a dog who was kind of a bigger dog, and he was holding on to the dog's harness, and I was trying to tell him, I was like, you shouldn't do that, because maybe I was just thinking it. I was like, if that dog moves, it's gonna just drag the kid. And somebody came in the door, so the dog wanted to run over and see who came in, and my nephew, who was very small, he didn't let go, and he's just getting drug across the kitchen. And I was saying, Janak, Janak. So Janak on its own is let go, or drop it. And then I switched to English, and I tried in English, and he just went across the whole kitchen, and finally, he didn't let go. He just sort of, I think the dog slipped out of his hand. But so achi would knock, hastuji achi would knock. They wouldn't release her. They didn't let her go, right? Their daughter. So combined, they took it, but they didn't let her go. So in this case, this could also mean, let's say two groups were fighting with each other, someone was held hostage, and you could have, that person, they wouldn't let him go. But then you could have a jiwanak. Oh, they let him go. Okay. Okay. I don't know if we're going to get to the end, but we'll get close. I think everybody read, maybe, so let's bring back around.
Do Xíxchʼ you ane kwan astikawa ak we ahini anak kagukla uku ye haskuyakas hayi.
Sheesh. Do Xíxchʼ you ane kwan astikawa ak we ahini anak kagukla uku ye haskuyakas Hayi. What do you recommend?
All right, that do Xíxchʼ is back to her dad doing something.
Yep.
You anikwan, the land people?
The people of the village.
Oh, and people of the village. So maybe they all grabbed? Oh, and the water in the lake. The ahini?
Yep.
Anak. From the picture, did they drink it all up? I don't know.
Okay. So this one has some complicated stuff in it. So the dad's gonna do something. Then, so he's doing it, but then we get, right after that, the people of the village, which could be a ku'u, but he said Kwan, and I was like, oh, that's really neat, because now it's like they are the village, so they're also the Kwan. The difference, if you want to get into subtle differences here, let's say we're in Huna, the Kwan would be those ancestral people of Huna. The Ku'u would be everybody. Just some slight differences there. Haschikawa ah. So this one, when you put the j in front of it, this is commanding someone to do a job. So it's a different than the other one we saw, which was to try. So this one is the boss. So this is how you give the orders to do the work. And so he and the father ordered the people to do this job. We'ahini, the water of the lake. This one is long. Anach is along it. Kaguchlakuhuye. Kuh is the verb root here. And you might have heard chachawakuh, for I'm thirsty. This verb kuh actually means to empty something of liquids. So this combined, and the yeh is a place. So this would be a trench to drain the lake. It kind of all gets put together in this very big, complicated verb, followed by this other big, complicated verb. Aawasháayi. So this would be they dug a trench. So it's kind of combined. So this on its own is like a place to drain the lake or to drain it, right? Whatever. And then this is they dug a trench. So there's a couple of really complicated verbs. You might have heard akawaha, which is to garden or plant something. Same verb root, but it gets a couple of different things that get added to it to make it fairly specific. And this is probably a verb you're not going to hear very much, but you will hear these other versions of it. And we're at time, so we'll just hold on and see what happens next. We'll pick it up on Thursday. We'll finish this story on Thursday, and then we'll move on to the next big thing. So, Xíxchʼ. We'll also talk on Thursday about what you folks want to do for midterm projects. They're coming up. I think we talked about some sort of language demonstration. We'll figure it out. I don't want to put any pressure. I just want us to put something together to show to each other. That's all we're trying to do. No competition, no pressure. There's no grading involved in what you do as far as a language demonstration, but just find what you're comfortable with and take it one step farther. That's all we're going to try and do. Oh, and then there's a study group on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:30. I think using the link for I could resend that link out if you folks want. There's an open study room that you can use anytime, and you can coordinate any sort of meeting at any time you want to, as long as it's language related. And so I'll try and figure out some ways to make that easier to communicate about and to coordinate. But Xíxchʼ for picking that up.
I sent out my 4 sentences.
Oh yeah. Let's start with that on Thursday. So if you have sentences to share, let's start with that on Thursday, because I didn't even give you a chance. It's just stingy with the time.
Did you want us to put them somewhere?
You can either send them to me or type them up and share your screen, whatever you're comfortable with. I would prefer if we could see it. It just sometimes helps us just to understand each other and just to see where we're at.
Okay.
Okay.
Can they
Xíxchʼ.
quote? Bye.
Xíxchʼ.
I had a question.
Dasa.
Like, can we like put like quotes like in our 4 sentences that we're sharing?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. As long as the whole thing isn't a quote, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yết